Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today's topic is going to be a fun one, but also, I think, surprisingly thought-provoking.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to be tackling the question, does height really matter in romantic relationships? So to get into this, we're actually diving into another podcast that playfully examines the pros and cons of dating taller versus shorter men.
Okay.
Now,
Interesting.
what I think is so fascinating about this is that while this might seem like a very lighthearted topic,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Height preferences can actually reveal a lot about societal norms and even like tie back to our evolutionary history.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot more to this than you might think at first glance.
Right.
This podcast we're exploring
Yeah.
doesn't shy away from some pretty bold arguments. Like they go everywhere from who's better at reaching that top shelf at the grocery store
Uh-huh.
to even wait for it.
Okay.
Who would be the ideal partner during a bear attack?
Now, that's a scenario I'm not sure I've considered before.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, how do you even begin to quantify that?
Interesting.
Before we get to those more outlandish comparisons, let's unpack some of the core arguments for each side.
Okay.
So the podcast starts by making a case for what they call walking Wi-Fi towers.
Okay.
These are the tall guys.
All right.
And they're saying that tall men have this undeniable presence. They kind of command attention when they enter a room.
Yeah, I think that idea of presence is interesting.
Yeah.
You know, evolutionary psychology suggests that historically taller men might have been perceived as more dominant and powerful.
Oh.
And so some of our preferences could be subconsciously influenced by what might have helped our ancestors survive and reproduce.
So even in today's world, that ancient wiring might still be playing a role in how we perceive partners.
Well, you know, it's certainly a factor to consider, but it's not the whole story. Times change.
Right.
And today, many people prioritize qualities like kindness, intelligence, shared values,
Right.
over purely physical attributes.
So it makes you wonder how much of what we find attractive is hardwired versus shaped by our culture and our experiences. Okay, so we've heard the tall guy argument.
Yep.
What does this podcast have to say about the shorter guy?
Well, they describe them as pocket-sized dynamite, suggesting that they often compensate for their lack of height with a big personality.
Oh.
They argue that shorter guys can be more fun-loving,
Sure.
more comfortable with PDA, even better travel buddies because of that extra legroom on flights.
That's funny. I had never really thought about the travel perks before.
Yeah.
But, you know, this idea of compensating makes me think, is there pressure on shorter guys to overachieve in other areas, to kind of fit in with those societal expectations?
That's an
Yeah.
insightful observation. I think comparisons might actually reveal some deeper societal pressures at play. It could make someone feel like they have to excel in
Right.
humor or charisma if they don't fit those traditional ideals of
I
masculinity.
hadn't thought of it that way. That adds like a whole new
Yeah.
dimension to this seemingly superficial debate. So while this
Right.
podcast is using humor, are they also kind of subtly highlighting how these stereotypes can impact people in a very real way?
Possibly. You know, it's a reminder that even lighthearted conversations about seemingly trivial topics
Right.
can
All right,
have
I'm
some
already
deeper
hooked.
implications.
Before we dive into their
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your
Yeah.
initial thoughts on these arguments from a psychological and sociological standpoint. What stands out to you?
Well, it's fascinating how this debate brings up the interplay between biology, societal norms, and individual preferences. You know, we might be subconsciously influenced by evolutionary factors, but we're also shaped by the cultural
Right.
messages we receive. and
Not
our
a simple
personal
equation, though. So
experiences.
tall equals attractive. There are so many layers to unpack. Okay, I'm ready for the next round.
Yeah.
What kind of scenarios does this podcast use to kind of pit tall guys against short guys?
Well, one that particularly caught my attention is about surviving. Get this, a
Okay,
bear
now I
attack.
have to hear more about this. Who does the podcast
Yeah.
think is better equipped to handle that situation? Tall guy or the short guy?
Well-
All right, I can't.
You'll have to
I'll
wait
be
and
right
see.
back. Wait.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So back to those bears. The podcast playfully suggests that a tall guy's speed
Oh.
might be an advantage, while a shorter guy's ability to hide might
So they're
prove
using this
more effective.
extreme scenario to kind of poke fun at those height-based stereotypes. Speed versus stealth.
Right.
But in reality, if you encountered a bear, I'm guessing height wouldn't be your main concern.
Exactly. It highlights how these comparisons are ultimately superficial when it comes to attraction. Real-life situations are
This
far
playful
more
debate
complex.
gets us thinking. But what does the science say about height and attraction? Is there any actual evidence that certain heights are perceived as more attractive than others?
There have been studies, yes.
Okay.
Some research indicates that on average, women tend to prefer men who are taller than them. But, and this is crucial, it's not a universal rule. Individual
That makes
preferences
sense.
vary greatly.
We all have our own unique tastes. But those averages you mentioned, do you think societal expectations play a role in shaping those?
You're raising a really important point. There can be a lot of pressure on men, especially those who don't fit the traditional tall and strong mold, to excel in other areas. It ties into the broader conversation about masculinity and the often unrealistic expectations placed on men. And remember, this whole height conversation is just one aspect of attraction. There are so many other factors that contribute to a fulfilling relationship. Shared values, intellectual compatibility, emotional connection, a sense of humor.
It's about finding
The list
someone
goes
who
on.
compliments you, challenges you to grow, and makes you feel seen and appreciated for who you truly are.
Exactly. And sometimes the person who ends up being your perfect match might completely defy your initial expectations.
Wow.
That's the beauty of human connection. It often
So
surprises
as we
us
wrap
in the
up,
most wonderful
I encourage
ways.
our listener to embrace their own unique qualities, challenge those limiting beliefs, and most importantly, stay open to the possibilities. You never know where you might find love and connection, and it might just be in the most unexpected of places. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. Keep an open mind and open heart, and most importantly, keep believing in the power of genuine connection. Until next time, happy exploring.